So we've seen loads of leaks for the Mini 3 Pro. Why should you be excited? Hello, my name is Jonathan Palfrey. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe as it massively helps me out. Now today I want to do a quick chat about these leaked images and leaked specs and some leaked pricing of the new DJI Mini 3 series, and this includes the standard Mini 3 as well as an exciting Mini 3 Pro, and that's what I really want to chat about here. Now I'm a bit late to the game, other people have already leaked a lot about this and talked about it, but I wanted to look from a slightly different perspective, looking from a professional standpoint. Why would we be interested in this new mini drone? And before we get into it, just in case you're wondering, why am I talking about the leak specs now and not just waiting for the actual official announcement, which seems to be fairly soon? Well, here's an honest reason and why it works with YouTube and everything. Unfortunately, you won't see this video if I were to release this on release day, because you know what will happen. All the big YouTubers will have this drone, they'll be testing it out, they'll be talking about all the specs, all that kind of thing, all the promotional videos from all the famous YouTubers you know. They're great, those films are wonderful, but unfortunately what it means is any sort of films where it's just discussing the potential use of this drone from smaller YouTubers, it will just get lost. So it makes more sense me talking about it now, and hopefully if on release day it's as good as we can hope it could be, then maybe I'll be picking one up and doing a proper review based on my perspective. The first thing you're probably thinking then is, why would we be interested in a Mini Pro drone? After all, there's plenty of other good options. If you're a pro, why don't you just go for the Inspire series? Why not go for the Mavic 3 Cine, for example? Well, to be honest, I thought we would have been going for the Mavic 3 not long ago, before the announcement and before it got released. We've been using the Mavic 2 Pro loads over the last several years. It's been such a workhorse. We've made a ton of money from that drone. It's certainly more than paid for itself, and it was brilliant value for money when it came out. It could be argued that maybe DJI made it too cheap, and that's why the Mavic 3 and the Mavic 3 Cine seems so expensive, because they're just trying to realign their sort of lineup of drones. In fact, when it comes to the Mavic 3, especially the Mavic 3 Cine, I don't really see that as a Mavic 2 Pro replacement. I actually see that more as an Inspire 2 Mini. If you think of it that way around, in terms of the sensor size, in terms of the price, the fact it includes ProRes HQ, suddenly it makes a lot more sense than trying to see why would you be going from a Mavic 2 Pro up to the Mavic 3, especially, let's say, the Cine version. For us, to be honest, we don't need those specs. And I didn't really feel from what I've seen online that the Mavic 3 is really giving us anything more, certainly what we need more compared to what the Mavic 2 Pro can provide. You know, 10-bit color and 4K is really more than good enough, and the Mavic 2 Pro does that really well. It's not to say I'd like to have the upgrade and certainly have the much bigger and better camera, but for us the Mavic 3 just didn't really seem like a sensible upgrade. Then of course there is the Air 2S, which could be argued is the true sort of replacement for the Mavic 2 Pro. It is missing some features, admittedly. You know, we don't have the aperture control, which is really, really frustrating, and it's certainly a limiting factor on that drone. That said though, image-wise, it's an upgrade from the Mavic 2 Pro. In terms of size, it's more compact, it's the latest sort of sensors and everything like that, and the latest transmission system. So overall, I would say it's probably the more sensible option if you were going to go for, you know, sort of that mid-range drone for someone who does occasional professional drone flying, but not full-time. Then I think the Air 2S made a lot of sense. That is until now. And this is where these leaked specs for the Mini 3 come in. Why would we then be interested in a Mini 3 Pro? Well, first off, it's its size. You know, having such a compact drone that you can just easily slide into a lens section of a camera bag is extremely useful. It means you can carry it with you anywhere, just in case you fancy getting just that one quick drone shot. It may not be planned, it may not be sort of scheduled in, thinking that you'll actually need it for that shoot, But just knowing that you've got it in the bag, just like you might have a 70-200 or a 50mm lens, just for that one time, you think, you know what, that's what this shot needs, then it's going to be there for those situations. You know, it could just be something as simple as doing a small crane shot, for example, of the outside of a building. It doesn't need to be big, epic drone shots all the time. Sometimes a drone shot can be really quite subtle. Second up, it is the weight. This drone is going to be under 250 grams, and why that is really important is for most of the world now, it seems to have settled on regulation where if a drone is under 250, then you can use it in a lot more different areas, a lot less regulation than if it's over 250 grams. That means suddenly, you know, you can just use it without necessarily needing lots of permissions or needing certain sort of flying certificates and regulations being met. Whereas if you're going for something that's heavier than that, such as an Air 2S or a Mavic 3, then you're going to need certain certificates in many places in the world. We don't know all the specs of the Mini 3 Pro. Hopefully it's going to have a larger sensor. There's sort of rumors that it may be very close to a 1-inch sensor, if not a 1-inch sensor. Certainly if it has a sensor of similar size to that, that is going to be excellent. That's going to make a huge difference to the image quality that you're going to get out of this drone compared to what the Mini 2 could provide. Apparently there's also about a 10% increase in battery life, so we're looking at probably about half an hour of battery, which for me is more than enough. Once again, you know, maybe if you're a full-time drone pilot, you want longer than that. But for a lot of us, actually half an hour is enough to get up a few shots and then come back down again. From the leaked images, it does look like it will have a 3-axis gimbal, which is really good because the previous one only had 2-axis. 3 is obviously going to provide much better stabilization and much more appropriate for professional use. There also seems to be a full range of sensors like you get on the bigger drones as well. And this actually makes more sense on a mini drone and an entry-level drone than it does on a more professional drone, because after all, you know, if you're entry into it, you're more likely to crash it, you're less experienced. So it's good to see that they've actually starting to add these sensors to the smaller drone. We can also expect this drone to have USB power delivery for charging those batteries, and for me, I'm really excited by that. I think that's an awesome thing to have. Some people might not be that bothered by that. They think the separate charger that you get with the Mavic 3 and things is absolutely fine. I personally want USB power delivery on every device I own, whether it's my MacBook Pro, which already has, whether it's my cameras, which are increasing and getting better. Certainly in the mirrorless world, I'd like to see cine cameras have it now. But I just want it everywhere. The reason why is because it's so easy then to charge. You know, you can bring one charger to do multiple devices, or if you do bring multiple chargers, it's just nice to have one standard cable rather than thinking, if that adapter breaks, then that's it. My camera can't turn on or my drone can't be charged. At least if it's just using power delivery, the chances are you've got a USB battery bank in your bag or a USB plug, or you can easily buy one from any shop anywhere in the world. So you're never ever going to be stuck for charging your drone. Now, when I first heard about the Pro version of this drone, I presumed it was just because the controller had a built-in screen. I could imagine DJI doing that, you know, separating their non-Pro and Pro devices just by the fact that one comes with a built-in screen while the other one doesn't. What's interesting is it looks like you can purchase the standard drone with the controller with the built-in screen as well as without, and then the Pro version also has the option with and without the controller with the built-in screen. That would indicate then that the Pro has something more to it than just the controller with the built-in screen. So what features could we expect or hope for out of the Mini 3 Pro? With the Mini 3 Pro, I do hope we're going to see Oculus Sync 3. It sort of makes sense they just use that across all their drones now. I'm sure, you know, compared to Wi-Fi for them in terms of a cost, it probably doesn't really cost any more, and it just makes more sense to standardize everything. It gives you much better range, much better sort of transmission. The Wi-Fi on the Mini 2 is just not good enough for professional use. I hope we can see 4K 60p. Whether we get that, I'm not so sure. Maybe, maybe not. You know, it'd be nice to see that included. I don't think we'll see anything above 4K, but that's absolutely fine. 4K is more than enough. If it was just 4K 25 and 4K 30, that is absolutely fine. I would certainly live with that. I think it's fine considering where this drone features in the lineup. But it would be cool to see up to 60p. Now, I really hope we get to see 10-bit color in this drone. For me, was the game changer. It has been the game changer across the entire camera industry. You know, what's made cameras suddenly now much more professional and certainly much more acceptable used in a professional environment is having that 10-bit color. We've seen it with cameras like the A7 IV. We saw it with the Mavic 2 Pro in the past. It was a massive game changer. It massively improved the drones compared to what we used to have. And I really hope that we get to see this in the Mini 3 Pro too. Connected to that, of course, is having D-Log as well. And well, D-Log once again only really makes sense if it has the 10-bit color. Without it, then it's probably better that you would stick to D-Cine-like instead. I certainly hope they had that at least. If it doesn't have either of those picture profiles, then I would not consider this a professional drone at all. Sadly, one thing I really don't think we'll be seeing in this drone is aperture control. They didn't put it in the Air 2S, and I really don't see them adding it to the Mini 3 Pro. It's probably just down to weight and size in terms of trying to fit everything in that tiny little camera module. And I think that technical limitation and also trying to separate, you know, their full-on professional lineup of Mavic and above versus anything below that, I don't think we'll be seeing that in there. Now, I mentioned earlier about those prices. Certainly if you're going for the top-end package with the Mini 3 Pro and the remote control with the built-in screen, it is going to be pricey. You know, we're looking at the prices and converted, it looks like $1,200 roughly. Compared that to the Air 2S, well, the base Air 2S is $1,000, just looking on B&H. And if you're going for the Air 2S with the Pro RC controller, you're looking at $1,700. So it lines up quite neatly. It makes sense. It's certainly a big price rise compared to what we would have been used to in the past with the Mini series and all DJI drones for that matter. You know, they've all seen a big price increase. But actually, I think that's probably more of a sign of where we are now with the drone industry, and certainly where probably DJI want to head. I think they've reached a saturation point. I think they've realized that there aren't really any more new drone pilots coming into the market that just want to buy a drone for fun and just to have as a hobby. These things are expensive, even at the cheap end. Even the Mini 2 is, you know, 300 quid in the UK, I think, what, $500 in America. It's not a cheap device. It's something, you know, that costs the same price as an Xbox or a PlayStation. These are things that in the past we would consider you purchase once every few years and, you know, it would be a big birthday present or a big Christmas present. Suddenly now there are some, you know, regular people just to buy these devices as a toy that they play around with occasionally once a month. Now, this is a lot of money. I think what's actually happened, they've realized that there isn't actually that many people using drones non-professionally. You know, when I look out and about, I rarely ever see someone actually out flying a drone. It's really, really rare. There's all these worries years ago that everyone would be out flying drones all the time. It was going to cause chaos and they'd be crashing into people, they'd be flying over everyone's gardens, that would be getting deliveries through drones, everything. That hasn't happened. And actually, once that hype has died down, and I think we've reached that point now where it's plateaued and they've realized that there's just no more sort of general public that want drones. So it makes sense to reposition their entire drone ecosystem to a more professional environment, to people who actually want to use drones to make money out of them, or certainly at least to build their Instagram feed. So with that in mind, it makes sense to charge a little bit more, but provide some additional features that you didn't get before on the smaller drones. So when I was seeing at the very top end, you've got your Inspire 2, which has been out for a long time now, but it's certainly more than good enough still for most use cases, with the dual controller setup, which allows the camera operator to use the camera separately from the drone pilot. That has its very good use cases where that's needed in those scenarios. Step down from that, you've got your, you know, Mavic 3 Cine and your normal Mavic 3. That's going to be used, once again, for a lot of people who may be using the Inspire 2, but that's too big or they don't need the dual camera operating setup. Then they'll go with the Mavic 3 instead. Below that again, we've got our Air 2S, and the Air 2S is going to be more than good enough for most sort of online professional productions. And I think that's the drone that probably most people in sort of our area of work are going to go for. Where the Mini 3 Pro comes in, well, that's for those who are just really occasionally just want to fly a drone. They're going to want to use a drone shot on the odd occasion for one of their clients, and it's just not worth investing any more in a system. But they want something that's certainly going to be good enough to match with their A7 IV, with their FX3, with a Canon C70, whatever that may be. The Mini 3 Pro is also going to be that specialist drone for when you're in situations where you really can't fly legally a larger drone as well, or you just feel it's not maybe safe to use a large drone. Because that's the other thing, there's safety, there's noise pollution, there's many other reasons why you may want to fly a much smaller drone, and that's where this Mini 3 Pro could really stand out. So it's not long until we hear more about this drone. The rumoured announcement date is the 28th of April, and certainly I will be talking about it a lot more if it's as exciting as it could be. You know, we may end up buying one ourselves just because I can see a lot of situations that if it's as good as it could be, then it will be an excellent drone in our setup. I'd love to know what you think. Do you think this is going to be an absolute game changer when it comes to DJI, or do you think it's still going to be too limited for professional use? I'd love to hear what you think. Please leave a comment down below. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.